one time I went up, I didn't camp that night, but I was literally walking up in snow up over my knees. I'm carrying 20 kilograms of gear. So like to walk it anyway, like it was absolutely exhausting. Every step, it's like you're carrying like the slider kit I use. Sometimes I bought a 2-camera setup, 2 sets of filters, 2 tripods, a 48-inch slider. Like literally you're like a mule walking up. It's tough going.
I don't know who you are, but welcome to the Irish Photography Podcast. Sit back, relax, and listen about cameras, gear, settings, stories, and all things photography. Join Darren on Ireland's Best Photography Podcast. Let's go.
You're very welcome to episode 149 of the Irish Photography Podcast. My name is Darren, I'm your host, and I'm joined by somebody whose work I only recently discovered. And when I discovered it, it absolutely blew me away. I'm delighted to welcome to the Irish Photography Podcast, Richard Watson. How are you getting on, Richard?
Not too bad. Thanks very much for having me on.
Oh, thanks a million for coming on, man. Pleasure to have you on. Absolute pleasure to have you on. Like I said, I discovered your work recently, and I'm really excited to kind of get into the nuts and bolts, actually, of the most recent work that you've done. I mean, you've done, we'll get into it in detail. You've done an incredible job and an incredible body of work. But yeah, how's things with you today? It's Friday evening. We're recording for next Friday when we go live. So how are you today?
Not too bad, having a glass of red wine. I was
Very
out
good.
walking the dog along the coast here. I'm up in Portrush on the north coast. So yeah, had a nice chilled out day. Yeah.
Very good. So
a bit nervous about this, but all good.
Don't be worried at all. You know, we're topping and tailing the country of Ireland now at the moment. So you're
Exactly.
almost the very top and I'm almost the very bottom. So we'll hopefully capture everything in between.
Plenty of time.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe, Richard, if I start, I suppose, you know, people know, who is Richard Watson?
I am a commercial photographer mainly. I'm 48 years old. I'm originally from Lisburn. I now live in Portrush up on the north coast. So I moved here with my girlfriend and her daughter in February. So I'm still getting used to being
newness,
having this in my door. I was so focused on the mournes for a year, and it's now dawning on me. You actually live here. You have this on your doorstep, you know. Yeah, so I'm mainly a commercial photographer. I'm professional photographer. That's what I do 9 to 5, and I just recently got into more into landscape photography because my girlfriend and her daughter are from Kyrgyzstan, which is the most stunning country. It's just so good, like 90% mountains, 80% mountains. It's mind blowing. I went for a couple of trips there, and through those trips, I kind of fell in love with landscape photography. I've done a lot of travel photography, Vietnam and Peru. But for the first time, I went out and got all the filters and thought, I'm going to take this seriously because it deserves to be taken seriously. The country is so good. So I guess that's what kind of got me into landscape photography initially, But yeah, a bit of a jack of all trades, a bit of video, drone, commercial video, everything. I'll do anything. I'll wash your car.
Well, you know what, you do anything as long as it involves a camera as well, I suppose. And that's probably something I think which is interesting, because you say you're a commercial photographer, but you've only just gotten into landscape. That blows me away, because what I've seen of your work, it's like as if you've been into and perfecting the art of landscape photography for a long period of time. So right from the outset, hats off in relation to that. And like, how did you get started in photography day one? So when you first picked up a camera, how long ago was that? A year and a half ago?
yeah, just straight into it. No, I set up my own sort of commercial photography business in 2009. So whenever the property sort of crisis was hitting, things were going bad. But I was I actually worked in a digital design agency back in those days with a couple of guys. And within that company, we did web design, corporate video, 3D modeling. And I always said to them, I want photography to be an element of that. I always had that passion, for that's where I wanted to go. I was very open about it. And it didn't quite take off within the company like I hoped. And then I was turning 36. It was 2009. And I just thought, if I don't give this a stab, I'll never forgive myself, and I'm 48 years old and I'm kind of getting on, So yeah, I sort of just jumped out. It was a recession. just chanced it, and I kind of, luckily enough, I had a lot of contacts, creative directors from my old company,
Okay.
from design agencies, designers and stuff, and it took a while to snowball, but slowly but surely they saw the work, they were happy with it, and they give you a punt, and you just gotta, every day is a test. You gotta keep on top of your game, So I kind of got through it that way, through a design agency. I worked in a couple of design agencies before that.
Okay.
I was fascinated by flicking through the stock photography books. In those days, it was catalogs. It was books, not online.
Not online, yeah.
And I just flicked through them in the design studio and just fell in love with all this abstract photography and macro and everything. And yeah, my cousin gave me an old Pentax film camera, and I remember at the time two people said to me, one said, I used to want to be a minister at one point, which is another story for another day.
Okay.
But someone said to me, you actually suit, I could see you being a minister. And then someone said, you know what, you actually suit having a camera in your hand. And I thought, okay, screw the ministry. I'll go with the camera.
Yeah.
That was my life-changing path.
Wow. And
Yeah.
you've mentioned a number of different styles of taking photos. I mean, the abstract side of things, macro and such like that. Like,
Yeah.
have you do portrait photography? Would you do product photography, architectural photography?
Oh, well, like the thing is, like, so I'm a full-time commercial photographer. So
Okay.
most of my work would come through most of the leading design agencies in the north.
Right.
So it can be anything, any day, and that's what I kind of love about it.
Yeah.
You could be shooting out on a farm. I had a recent Kraken shoot. Doesn't sound really good, but it was on a pig farm.
Okay.
Shooting studio headshots in a studio, and then shooting background plates on a pig farm, and then they were sort of come together. So you could be anywhere from. I do a lot of work with Tourism Northern Ireland, and headshots for anything from solicitor to banks to every day is different, and that's what I like about it. A design agency give you a call and send you out, and off you go. The only problem with that, I guess, is you kind of have to, as I said, you're a bit of a jack of all trades. You have food photographers who perfect food. So like you could go into like a hotel and you have to shoot drinks and food and lifestyle shots. So you have to have your finger in every single pie, So in a way, it's stressful for sure, yeah. But no, I really enjoy it. Although having said that, it's changing. It'll come out during this chat, but my love for that has gone down slightly.
Okay.
And landscape is kind of
taking over,
fighting its corner. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you've kind of alluded to it there a moment ago, I think, where the love for landscape came from. But like, when you were first starting out, 36 years of age, okay, I want to get involved in this. I want to try and use the camera from a money-making point of view. Landscape photography typically isn't something that you can make money from. So it's a different viewpoint. So I imagine it's the passion for the landscape as opposed to the commercial realization that, okay, I can make money through the design agencies, but now with landscape, it's something that is within your soul, I imagine. It's with the passion that drives you. And where did that come from the landscape point of view? Maybe tell me a bit more about that.
The landscape point of view, I think when I first picked up a camera, even before I got into commercial work, I was sort of fascinated by urban photography. Okay. And in a way, that's kind of landscape for me. But it was kind of very decay. I quite like that morbid side, but so seascapes, but kind of very sort of minimalist. So I guess that element was there from the beginning. But you were asking how I moved into landscape photography in general,
yeah.
I probably, because I shoot with Tourism Northern Ireland quite a bit, as I said, you're jack of all trades, so you're expected to shoot landscapes to a certain extent. I have a drone, so you're shooting landscapes with that, but in a way, as a lot of people think, drones cheating. In a way, it's not filter based. Anyone can put a drone in the air and get a decent shot. I still like to think in thirds. I still like to think about lead-in lines, even if I'm in the air, whether that's video or stills. I think everyone puts a drone in the air and just thinks that's good enough. Having the bird's eye view, your eye has to draw through the shot still.
You still have to curate the image.
Yeah, there has to be something that draws you somewhere. But basically, it was that kind of. I'd been on a couple of trips to Vietnam and Peru. And when I'm away traveling, I shoot a lot of markets and mainly people stuff, just the feel of the country, and really get into the people. and they always went down very well on social media. But I remember having a few landscape images from Vietnam, and like all beautiful, like rice paddy fields and stuff. And I wasn't there with a tripod, I wasn't there with filters, and kind of coming back and thinking, oh shit, I should have done that much better. Like I wasn't getting up at sunrise and I wasn't chasing good light. You're traveling, so you're sort of getting what you get as you go. And then when I met my girlfriend, as I say, she's from Kyrgyzstan, incredible country. And I went there for the first time, and that was different. I kind of thought, okay, I'm going to go out here with a bit of a game plan.
Okay.
It was frustrating game plan because it needed a bit more thought than I probably give it. But again, it was sort of 2/3 people photography, 1/3 landscape photography.
Okay.
But the images went crazy online. I was interviewed by loads of like news agencies in Kyrgyzstan. Albert Dross had just been over. He has a Kyrgyz girlfriend as well.
Okay.
Funnily. So between the two of us, like we kind of got Kyrgyzstan a bit on the map. But he got interviewed, I got interviewed, and the second time I went back, I was then sponsored by two of the agencies that interviewed me. So that made me up my game even more because I felt I had to really deliver this time. So I guess that dragged me into landscape photography more and more. But honestly, it was lockdown. When commercial work dried up, there was nothing in the diary, and it was just like a sanity thing. I'm just going to go out and shoot and use the time, and yeah, I kind of threw myself into it. As I said, I drove 2/3 of the Wild Atlantic Way in 6 weeks, and just really kind of just blitz it. But I guess having the eye from the commercial work, you know your photography, you know how to create an image and where you want people to draw their eye through. It's just all about filters and controlling light and just chasing the light, really. Patience.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And it's interesting you say it, that when you get out and you go along the Wild Atlantic Way, I mean, you kind of, it's like as if you're dipping your toe in the water to a certain extent, but to see what's around. But then you really dipped your toe in the water and you immersed yourself from toe to head and anything else in between in the mournes. And this is where I was fascinated to find out more, because you released something recently which blew me away. I've watched it, I don't know how many times now, and each time I watch it, I see something different. So maybe tell me a bit more about this. Where did the idea come from in the first place?
There's an amazing time-lapse photographer called Morten Rustad, who's based in Norway, and his work is mind-bogglingly beautiful. He had one of his earlier projects was Seasons of Norway. He's Norwegian, and it just there's something about time-lapse that just captivates me. The power of a still image, it's just there, the power of the waves captured in a still, but to see something that the eye doesn't see, like video doesn't get that, real-time video, the time-lapse and just seeing the creeping shadows, and it's just otherworldly to me. It's so ethereal, it's just so captivating. So I've always had a real love of time-lapse. I shoot a bit commercially when I can in my sort of commercial video. Okay. It's a guy called Ryan Simpson. You probably know, a photographer from up here. He had done a couple of time-lapse videos in the mournes, one maybe a couple of years ago, one 4 years ago. Lovely stuff. Initially, I thought during lockdown, okay, I was out shooting landscapes. I was going a bit crazy, like everybody was. And I just thought, I think I need a project to kind of keep me sane. And that was kind of partially the process behind it. Lockdown kind of knocked me for six a wee bit, kind of, I don't know, being a bit withdrawn, and I just thought, I just need something to really get my teeth into here. So initially I thought about doing like one around Ireland, like a time-lapse of Northern Ireland or Ireland in full, but restrictions were, for me,
opening, it was work. Closing,
I was going to the mournes to work, and that's debatable and blah blah blah. But yeah, I thought, okay, I'll just stick to the mournes. At the time I was living in Belfast, it wasn't too far away. Okay. And I'll be able to give it more attention. So yeah, just as autumn was approaching, I just thought, right, I'll go for that, not knowing how addictive, how fanatical, how much of a perfectionist I can be. And it became this all-consuming year ahead. And halfway through, I kind of wished I hadn't have taken it on, but I did, yeah.
Tell me, how many trips did you make in total?
I don't know the exact number. It's definitely above 100.
Wow.
I'd say it's probably about closer to 150 treks. no, sorry, I haven't said, like, some of them are ground level. So some nights, like there's one, for an example, the morning mist over Spelga Dam. The mist is where the actual longer time lapse is even more beautiful. I'm sort of lifting 6 seconds here and there.
Okay.
But that one, I probably spent 3 nights in the van waiting for that nice light. Now that was ground level, so it wasn't a hike, but it's still a lot of work to get that one, So, but yeah, I'd say probably at least 100 treks and probably about 50 wild camps, and some of them were brutal. I mean, brutal. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like in the snow and everything else. When you said you started this in autumn, so you're going away from the nice weather, let's just say. You're going into the more dramatic photographic weather, but obviously not the nicest to be out wild camping in. So were you wild camping in the snow and everything as well?
Yeah. Probably, I'd say I brought myself a red Hilleberg tent.
Okay.
And even before the time lapse kicked in, I kind of set myself a goal. I had this. I was never the outdoor type overly.
Okay.
I'm not a camper. I'm not a huge. I haven't been in the Mournes for like maybe 8 years before that, if I'm honest. And I set myself this goal to see this red tent pitched in white snow, and I was just so looking forward to it. It was like a dream come true when I saw it. But me and Steve and Hannah went up, and camped up there a few times in the snow. So one time I went up, I didn't camp that night, but I was literally walking up in snow up over my knees. I'm carrying 20 kilograms of gear, so like to walk it anyway, like it was absolutely exhausting. Every step. It's like you're carrying like the slider kit I use. Sometimes I bought a 2-camera setup, 2 sets of filters, 2 tripods, a 48-inch slider. Like literally, you're like a mule walking up. It's tough going.
Wow.
But yeah, all conditions. But the snow was tough. Like I think the worst we had, Steve and a couple of guys, we were up, and it was like -15 wind chill. Yeah, it was really cold. So like you're in your tent. Like once it gets dark, you have 1 glass of wine, you bear it as long as you can, you jump in your tents for survival and just try to sleep. And you're in your bag trying to create heat. And if you put your hand outside of your sleeping bag to get a phone or whatever, it's biting cold. Like I've never felt pain in my fingers like it ever. It was tough.
Jesus,
yeah, really tough.
Almost instant pain, I suppose, too, when you think about it. I mean, -15 wind chill. Like you want to make sure you do your wee before you go to bed, because they're trying to get up in the middle of the night to do that, you'll be in trouble.
No, me and Stephen discussed this. We had pee bottles. There's no way you're leaving your tent. There's no way you're leaving your tent. Once you get in, you're not getting out. There's no way.
Yeah, Jesus, yeah.
But it was tough going. And then you think how it is for a photographer generally to get up 2 hours before so see to go through that pain of being a photographer and getting up before first light. Doing that in the freezing cold and the howling winds when it's dark and you can't see. It takes something else just to drive yourself to leave your tent at all. Yeah.
Fair play to both of you, I suppose. I mean, Stephen has been a guest in the podcast before, and I mean, I think he's a phenomenal photographer. He's got a great mindset as well. So I think he probably both helped each other on, I think, to be able to kind of go through that.
No, to be honest, I'll give him a shout out here. I probably couldn't have done it without him, to be honest, because he's shooting a panoramic, series in the Mournes. So, and I was shooting my separate project, and we kind of spurred each other on. I think, I think I wouldn't have gone up every time unless I had a bit of backup. I mightn't have even left my tent in the morning.
Yeah.
Unless you knew someone else was there setting their alarm to get up as well. It really helped, to be honest. So he's a lovely guy.
Big shout out. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
And did you do all 4 seasons there? So you started in autumn, you did winter.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do spring and summer as well?
I did. I did, but spring and summer were a bit sort of combined together.
Right.
Because I knew commercial COVID had sort of passed slightly, and commercial work was starting again.
Yeah, normality was returning. Yeah,
I kind of knew it would be harder to get as much time to cover those seasons, so I kind of give it about 2 minutes. Autumn had 2 minutes run time. Winter had 2. Like winter, I have so many clips that aren't used that it was hard to pick which ones, to be honest. But spring, summer, I combined that into 2 and just sped it up a wee bit. So like the bluebells coming out. the heather, but
Yeah.
it's maybe not as full on devoted spring, devoted summer. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, I shot right through those seasons. And to be honest, summer was the hardest of them all to get usable shots
Yeah.
because of the bloody midges. Midges are a
Yeah.
nightmare. So you
Flying teeth.
get in between your filters. Like you imagine, like if you're shooting a still landscape photo and midges,
Yes.
imagine trying to shoot 500 in a row, and you've
Oh
got
my
your wee
God.
rocket blower in the front of your things, just trying to keep the wee buggers out. It was so that they ruined loads of them. Yeah. So and then the heat. I found summer more difficult to shoot than the others, just to get something usable.
Yeah, I think, and also as well, I mean, with the light, I mean, you very little nighttime light. So, I mean, you could be great for particular, for example, astro, etc., etc. But like you've very, very long days. I mean, with the winter period of time, is it a kind of an advantage that the day is somewhat short because you can say, okay, it's getting dark now, right? I can get my rest because I know I've got a full on day tomorrow. But the temptation when it's bright is just to keep going. And that's where I find that I kind of enjoy the winter more than the summer. For me, anyway, getting up if I want to go for a sunrise shoot, I might as well not go to bed. So the winter time is better for me in that way. Was that one aspect that you kind of didn't enjoy the summer as much, or was it purely the heat and the midges?
It was probably mainly the heat and the midges. Just it was harder to get shots. But yeah, I mean, summer was good in a way because you could go up and literally, it was just nice being up there in the summer. The midges
Mm-hmm.
are unbearable, but you've got your Avon
Repellent.
skin so soft and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's beautiful being there in the summer because you can actually sit and enjoy it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't feel like the battle that winter did, and autumn was quite tough as well. But yeah, they're really long days, especially you kind of tend to go up earlier. But I was very specific about trying to chase that sunrise sunset light.
Mm-hmm.
Although having said that, looking back on it, I maybe shouldn't have quite as much. I think I should have just gone up in the middle of the day and left the slider behind and gone waterproof and chased storm clouds a bit more
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of the
Mm-hmm.
day. Because yeah, I kind of felt that I was always chasing this kind of beautiful colored skies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And looking back on it, I was obsessed with bringing the slider, the full kit. And yeah, just the middle of the day, if you get like rain showers, sunny spells, you're going to get drama all day long.
Yeah, all
But
day.
my main slider kit isn't waterproof. It's huge. So yeah, there's a few things I probably do differently, to be honest.
Mm.
But
Mm.
yeah,
And what did you enjoy most about it?
the peace, the solitude,
Brilliant.
the honestly just yeah, like I've never been like a huge wild camper apart from like back in school days and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a real sense of pride in it. Like, see, when you wake up and you set up a time lapse and you sit back for whether it's 20 minutes or 3 hours to wait for it, and just sitting there and feeling, there's a real sense of pride behind it,
Mm.
to be honest, and just that
Mm.
real sense of just, I don't know. It kind of reminded me of why I picked up a camera in the first place,
Okay.
which was to kind of, in a way, get closer to nature and
Mm-hmm.
connect a bit more. And then kind of commercial comes and you almost live behind a frame.
Mm-hmm.
Kind
Mm-hmm.
of, even when I did my travel photography in Vietnam and Peru, you kind of walk through markets and you never feel like you're actually in the market. You're always thinking like this,
Mm-hmm.
like through
Mm-hmm.
a frame.
Yeah.
And I think for the first time in many years, I actually felt that I was living what I was shooting.
Wow.
And that was the difference for me. It was incredible. Yeah.
And you know what I mean? It's your heart and your passion that's driving you too. That you kind of enjoyment for you. It's you time. It's the peace. It's the solitude. It's
Mhm.
getting in touch with nature. It's also learning your canvas more every single time you go there. So you're getting more intimate with that canvas. So you're actually going, actually, you know what? There's something I didn't think of here. And then all of a sudden you might get your light. And I think that's probably where it's really fulfilling to be able to go, yeah, I had that idea because I was out there. If I was busy doing things on the day to day, I would never have thought of that. And bang, you get the result. I mean, I absolutely get you. I
Yeah.
mean, landscape photography for me is where I go to get away from everything because there's
Mhm.
typically no mobile signal,
Mhm.
so nobody can, interrupt me, but I can actually really get in the zone. And it's interesting because peace and quiet is something that not many people have. There's always something. There's always hustle and bustle going on. There's always
Mhm.
something of a distraction. But when you're out there, all you're thinking about is there. Your present moment awareness is through the roof at that point in time.
Yeah.
Do you
Now,
know?
don't get me wrong. There was actually I think there was maybe 5 times I actually drove away from the mournes and gave them the bird as I drove away. Like it's making me sound like I'm at one with the mountains. There was one time I actually stood on top of a mountain and shouted, "Fuck you, mournes!" Like literally, I just felt maybe there was a 4-month spell where I was getting no luck whatsoever with light, and like there was one mountain I climbed 6 times and never had a view out of a cloud with 20 kilograms of gear.
Wow.
Like there was times whenever I actually Rhino camera gear who do the slider system. They interviewed me like a while back near the start of it, or maybe halfway through, and it was all very positive, saying, you know, for me it's all about even if you don't get a shot, like you're out in the world and you're out in this beautiful landscape, and you just gotta, if you get obsessed about getting a better hit rate, you're going to annoy yourself. You just have to enjoy being out, and if you get something that's a bonus. That changed about 2 months later because I started diving away, giving the bird to the mournes, going, seriously, give me a break. You know, kind of they almost broke me.
Wow. Right. Well, look, on that bombshell, I'm going to take a first break there, okay? And I'll be right back. I want to talk to you a bit more in relation to about putting the whole thing together. The first part's been fascinating, so I'm excited to hear the second part now. So we'll be right back after this. If you're enjoying this episode of the Irish Photography Podcast, why not jump back and listen to the back catalogue we have of episodes, where you'll get some great insights from fantastic guests, gear reviews, lots of hints and tips, and above all else, keeping you company while you drive or relax. Thanks very much for listening. Please consider subscribing, leaving a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. You're very welcome back to the Irish Photography Podcast. So, I really want to now get into the nuts and the bolts in relation to putting all this together. We know that you've really put a lot of time in getting up there and, you know, getting the photographs and getting the footage and everything else. But how much footage did you get overall? Have you ever measured it? Is it terabytes?
No, I've been asked before and I don't have an answer, if I'm honest. I know I used about 82 clips in the final piece.
Okay.
There's probably about kind of 150 or so that weren't good enough to get in, or got beaten by others. I kind of tried. My aim was to give myself a problem with every season, where I'd be heartbroken to drop ones out for other ones, and that's I tried to shoot so much that each one fighting to get in was as strong as could be. So that was my plan, to overshoot it, to kind of make sure that there was that disappointment in dropping good ones out, and there has been, you know, there's some I was heartbreaking not to see in there, but you're probably talking about, there's so many attempts where I tried and maybe just for the sake of it, you know, but didn't use it. I'd say easily like 100,000 photographs.
Wow.
Definitely, like I'd say 4 terabytes of data. You know, I've got it across 3-4 terabyte drives of other stuff on there as well. But definitely, I'd say, you know, 4 terabytes would be the guts of it. You know, the problem was I was actually shooting on a Sony A7R4 for a large part of it.
Okay. Big files.
61 megapixel files. Editing that was, I spat them out as like full highest quality TIFFs I could, so that was perfect color rendition. Everything was, my computer was freaking out. But literally, I got to the point later on when I kind of realized, okay, no matter what cards I have, they're not writing fast enough for it to move on for the next shot. The clouds and the mournes move so fast, you know. So I jumped between an A7R4, an A7 III, and an A7S3 eventually. But yeah, so that's 4 terabytes probably because so much of it was A7R4. The main reason being I didn't want to get that one shot in the middle of a time lapse that worked perfectly as a still and not have it there at best resolution, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why I did that, but it's probably not the right camera to use for a time lapse.
Yeah, Jesus, yeah, fair play to you though for doing that. I mean, fair play to your computer as well to be able to handle doing all that, you know. Yeah, and like one of the items, you know, that you've used, you mentioned earlier about bringing different things up mountains and such like that, and an integral part of your kit is something that really adds a huge amount to every time lapse, which is your slider. Tell me about your slider. What slider did you use? And tell me all the details in relation to how you came to the decisions to bring what you brought up mountains.
Yeah, I think this is the bit that the general public, for want of a better word, Yeah, a photographer will see the movement in it, the cinematic movement, and kind of get that it's reels and it's a motion control system. I don't think that your average punter will see that and sort of realize what kind of kit you're actually carrying up there. But it's a Rhino Arc 2, so Rhino camera gear to the second version of their Arc, and it's exceptional for time lapses, especially. It's perfect, buttery smooth. It weighs a ton. It actually weighs like it feels like a breeze block. So that you're bringing that up there with like sometimes a 2-camera setup. You're bringing 2 tripods. I run it across 48-inch reels, like a 48-inch slider. You've got maybe a set or 2 of filters. Sometimes you have your tent to stay up. Yeah, so like you're carrying. Sometimes I have people who helps. There's a guy, Adam. Shout out to him too.
The Sherpa.
Yeah, Sherpa. Yes, I actually I put out a joke on Instagram saying looking for a Sherpa, and he got in touch, and he knows his mountains. Like he's a mountain kind of guide, and he was a great guy. I think I broke him eventually. I'll tell you that in the story later on.
Okay.
But yeah. So like you're climbing 700-meter peaks. With that kind of kit, there was certain ones I just knew wouldn't be possible with that kit.
Yeah.
But having said that, when I brought Adam, Sherpa, whatever you want to call him, I brought 2 cameras. So I thought, okay, I've got extra help. So I didn't actually lessen my own weight that much.
Yeah.
It was
more gear.
You just bought more gear. Yeah. And it was nice, to be honest, because there's a couple of them where I've shot the same scene in 2 different views, and you can sort of punch in, jump into the same scene tighter, which was nice. Which with an A7 R4 you probably could have done anyway.
You could have,
61 looking back on it, but there you go.
But as they said, it was the movie Trainspotting. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, but I mean, you kind of you want to do it right, like So to have that, and I suppose the other side to it too, really, is that if you didn't do that, you would kick yourself afterwards and going, I wish I did, because I just wanted to have it. So it's good to have it and not use it, as opposed to not have it and need to use it.
Yeah, well, there's like most people who shoot time lapses, like that guy Morten Rostad, who for me is like one of the best in the world, that Norwegian guy. Like he's out with the screw-on ND filter, variable ND, just because ideally you want to shoot a second exposure. You want your clouds to have a wee bit of drift in them.
Yeah.
So it's not too itty bitty, aggressive in the eyes. If you can get that slight movement in the clouds, it just drifts. It visually it's perfect to the eye as a time lapse. Now, but he only uses like a variable ND just to get that kind of exposure. There aren't many other people I know who bring a filter kit. Like a problem like a Nissi, or I've got Nissi and Lee.
Yeah.
Sometimes I brought both. So there was a bit of a sense of like I like to get things in camera as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And like you're in the Mourne, like at one point I had a 12-24 lens, like a Sony 12-24 GM. The filters for that are like windows,
ginormous,
window panes. It's like a ship sail, when the wind's hitting you, So yeah, and you're carrying a glass up a mountain as well. I broke one, and that was all, which I'm surprised at. But yeah, but I've got this obsession about getting it right in camera as much as you possibly can.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I suppose, like, with the light changing as well, I mean, that's going to be difficult even more so. So, like, for somebody who doesn't do a time lapse, you'll take a photograph right now and the light might be a certain way. You turn away, you come back 5 minutes later, the light's going to be different. Your settings are going to be different to capture the photo and the exposure correctly. When you're doing a time lapse now, your light is so dynamic that it's changing. You have to make sure that you're able to control that light, because, like, thinking for argument's sake, on a sunrise, you're going to have a longer exposure, and as the sun comes up, your exposure is going to be shorter. So, like, how did you approach that with the changing of the light?
You have to ramp it. Obviously, if it's the same scene, over half an hour, and the light's changing, you kind of want the light to change. It gets dark and the light comes through. That's a fixed scene. But for sunrise, sunset, you physically have to ramp the exposure. So you'll start by sort of just dragging your shutter a wee bit, or going the other way depending on sunrise or sunset. And then when you get to a certain point within your interval, obviously you've got your interval to think about. Then you'll start sort of pushing your ISO, and you'll know, like I was an A7R4, which is a cracking camera for time lapse and studio based work. It's terrible in low light, so I wouldn't push it past ISO 800.
Okay.
So basically, but so you can get kind of intervalometers that kind of do that for you, like at the Timelapse Plus, that kind of do all these sort of changes based on the JPEG reading it's getting from the back of the camera. But I don't have one of those. So you're basically sitting there and just bumping it by a third of a stop exposure just every now and then.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that will come through as a kind of jittery file, but there's a program called LR Timelapse.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you maybe jumped into at some point, and it's incredible what the guy has done with that, Gunther. So basically, you just say it's a holy grail. So holy grail is day to night, and it just sees all the exposure bumps, and it just flags them all. You then edit the keyframes, so you might just edit maybe 2 or 3 keyframes in the whole sequence. In Lightroom, spit it out, and it will just smooth. It'll just do all your it'll sort of blend the exposures. So say, for example, you started one dark to light, it will sort of fade those right through. But bearing in mind that there's exposure bumps for your exposures in, it's like the software is brilliant. It's so good. But
it smooths it out instead of being so harsh.
It's amazing. And then you have to deflicker, and there's a lot of so much work involved. Like some of them, I spent maybe 3 or 4 days fighting to kind of get it not flick. You get a lot of flicker in time lapses, to be honest, depending on the lens and things. So there was a lot of work in getting that. But yeah, so basically, to answer the question, you sit at the back of the camera and you just flick the exposure as it's getting lighter and darker, and then keep an eye on it. There's a couple of I walked away from thinking it would be okay, and there was one sunset I didn't stay and man the camera. I got too excited because the light was too good. I went to set up a second camera and came back, and I'd ruined the main one, but. Mistakes here and there.
But you know what? Mistakes mean that you learn. I mean,
I learned so much. I know my time lapses. I know how to shoot time lapses very well, but when you're shooting them in the mountains, it's so different because it's not like you're sitting with a car or van beside you with all your lenses. Like you've got to. There's serious sacrifices about what you bring and what you leave behind. You know what I mean? So you kind of really get to know certain lenses. And like I bought a 70-200 for the first half of the year, just all time. But it's a 2.8, weighs a ton, like an absolute ton. And even to be honest, it's so windy. Maybe 1 in every 3 attempts, I got something that stuck. And then finally, halfway through the year, I got a 24-105, which is perfect. And I kind of wish I had got that earlier in the year, just to punch in a bit more, So yeah, you kind of learn. Like I probably invested about maybe $8,000 in kit.
Wow.
For that project, just to kind of get the right gear to shoot it right as I went along, which is mad for a passion project.
Well, yeah, do you know what? But look what you got out of it on the other end is you got something that's really good. You're, as you said, when you've got so much content that's there that you wanted to have a situation that you had to remove something, even though it was brilliant in its own. So having the right gear at the right time enables you to get the right photo, time lapse, piece for the movie or piece for the film or piece for the project or whatever it is you're doing. So like I would slag Dermot again, a buddy of mine, he would say that gear makes you a better photographer. And I said, no, it doesn't make you a better photographer, but it allows you to get the shots that you want to get. Without certain gear, you won't be able to get that. So yeah, I mean, it's a good investment in a passion project. And absolutely, I agree with you to have all that when you want to come back and putting it all together. And actually, talk to me about when you're putting it all together, like, how long did it take you when you finished, or were you starting to piece it together and still going back up for more? Did you wait till it was all done and then put it together, or what?
I kind of know, like it's the same as when you come back with a photograph, like you out shooting today, like you can't wait to get stuck into it. But sometimes you're better to sit back from it before you approach it, type thing. But yeah, I would come back from every trip and offload the cards and have a quick look at them at least. And if I thought there was a real killer one in there, I would edit it there and then. I probably then did slight re-edits on the actual Lightroom, post-production at the final stage. But yeah, I always had a working version along the line. I was trying to get a sponsor to come on board at one point, so I wanted a working version to approach some of the bodies. So yeah, like even by the end of autumn, I probably had something to show sort of moving forward. So yeah, I was after every trip, you'd probably maybe spend like a day kind of working the nose. But when it came down to the final edit, I'd say I probably spent like 2 months, like just no, not like 9 to 5, but
finessing it,
plugging away at it. And the thing is, like I would never have got the chance to do this project if it wasn't for what came along, COVID. I wasn't working commercially as much, but the whole world was up enjoying the mournes. So the footfall up there was kind of crazy. And the funny thing is, like, the mournes are quite small, to be honest. They're a very small range.
Okay.
And you can be up in Doan, for example, and you're sort of seeing in the towns around. Astro is quite difficult there because there's so much light around it. But I wanted to make my project. At one point, I was going to call it Isolate and not Mourne, because it was kind of a COVID thing for me. So I didn't want a single person in there. I didn't want a single footstep in the snow. I didn't want a single sheep. Obviously, birds have to be worked up nonstop. So yeah, I kind of, the amount of work to edit people out. If people walk through your scene, and it was so busy the mournes. So I wanted it to feel like it was just you in the mournes. The viewer felt like they were there, and it was like a window to it. So you're editing people out frame by frame by frame over a 400 image sequence, and that was painstaking. And then some of them I couldn't beat the flicker in some of them. What was it? The morning mist one. Sorry, no, the moonrise. So the super moon setting. It doesn't look like I could have had a better lens for that to punch in more. I don't have anything beyond 200, but yeah, it flickered like crazy, and it took me days just working on that one clip just to get it smooth to the eye. So yeah, like months. But again, like my girlfriend came into me and just thought I'd lost my mind. I just said, like, you're looking at things people will never, like, I was just literally sheep like down in the valleys and stuff. You're going to, you've gone mental. I was like, no, like, I don't want a single thing to distract the viewer from where their eyes meant to be. That was yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And when you start getting your footage together, then you're in the editing process, and something that really, really works to put the whole lot together is the soundtrack that you pick, the music that you pick. Where did you get the music from?
The short answer is it's 2 tracks from MusicBed.
Okay.
And I kind of like blended 2 together. And then there's a tiny wee snippet that the opening kind of shimmer with the Milky Way. That's actually the same track that Morten Rustad had used from his Seasons of Norway. At one point, I thought about using that. I thought, no, he's my hero. I can't use the same track, so I didn't. But from having the shimmer in there at one point, I love the opening shimmer, but it wasn't long enough. So I actually approached the guy who wrote that music and got him just to extend the shimmer by 3 seconds. Cost me 50 quid just to get that to see. But basically, the music again, I honestly spent half a year trying to find the right music. And then I finally realized it wasn't going to happen, and I had to be merging 2 tracks. You're trying to hit 4 seasons with a lift and a build and a change of mood, and to get 1 track to do that, it was just impossible. So I tried to commission someone to write one. That didn't really work out. I didn't like. I hated where it was going. So yeah, I finally thought, okay, it's going to have to be 2 tracks. And just one day, I just found 1 track that was perfect. And then I thought, okay, let's look in the same guy's portfolio, and just find 2 that just worked so well together. I remember just going downstairs and just going, I've finally cracked it. Like I would spend almost like going to bed at night, half an hour in bed, just flicking through songs and MusicBed, adding them to playlists. Just wait, as you said yourself, you wait for that 1 track just to blow you away. You think when you hear it, you hear it. And for half a year, I didn't. I listened almost every day for, like, as I was editing, commercial work. I just let them run through like you're listening to Spotify.
Yeah.
It never happened. And then when I finally got the music, the best thing about finally having the music was I knew when I was moving into spring, summer, and the speed of the track, you kind of know what you're, like, I was working in 4 seconds snippets per time lapse. So you're normally, you shoot a time lapse thinking 8-10 seconds, maybe 15. But when you have your music, okay, well, visually I'm only showing 4 seconds of this, so you got to make your movement a bit more punchy. Otherwise it's going to be so slow. I wish I had had the music earlier, because it almost directs where you go.
Yeah.
But when I finally got it, it was like, yes, I know exactly what I need. Like I knew how many clips I needed once I had the
And to be able
music
to fit the whole
agreed.
thing through. Yeah.
Yeah.
And looking at the whole entire editing process, right? How did you find it? Like, did you find it frustrating as time? Obviously, it was a lot warmer than you were up in the mornings in the middle of winter, right? So you didn't have that cold feeling. But like, did you find it frustrating at times then along the route, as you say, from the flickering point of view, or using LR time lapse? Okay, it fixes this. Then you got the music, but the sense of accomplishment at the very end of it, does that outweigh the frustrations that you would have putting it together?
No, I wouldn't say there were frustrations. It was just all part of the process. That kind of like finding the right music was just being fussy, and it being a labor of love. The music had to be right. So it wasn't frustration, but yeah, like the seeing it full come together. Yeah, it was very amazingly satisfying. And to be honest, it's just more satisfying seeing the people's reactions to it, which is it's kind of like there was certain reasons for me doing it. One was just to keep me sane during lockdown. One was kind of just for my commercial clients to go flip, if we need a time lapse, we know exactly where to go.
Yeah,
that was the main reason. So to associate your name with that, as you call it, craft. And then one of them, actually one of the main ones, was I'm 48 years old. To have something to look back on in 10 years time and go, I did that, because I'm really, really, really proud of it, because it was the hardest year I've ever had. And then finally just to sell some, license some clips here and there as well. So there's a lot of different facets to what I was doing. But yeah, no, the editing process, I enjoyed it. It's painstaking at times, but you kind of enjoy it, because you're just trying to get it nailed down exactly how you envisage it. Envision. Oh, I can't even say that word. Sorry.
Envisage it.
Edit out.
The way you saw it in your mind.
Yeah, you add a lovely cork brogue to that
bit. you wanted to see it pan out the way you saw it in your mind.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And I think that's the most important part, because if you enjoy doing something, that's the most important thing. I mean, many people have said to me on many episodes, don't shoot for your audience, or don't do things for your audience. Do it for yourself, first of all. If you like it, that's all that matters. But it's a bonus then when the public reacts to it and reaffirms your view of what your vision was, and they loved it. So I think, like, it's interesting you say, that you can see so many different avenues coming from that, even from the commercial point of view, or even licensing clips and such like that. It's probably only just starting, really, to be honest with you, Richard, because like how long ago did you release it?
On my birthday, the 9th of October, so just over a month.
Happy birthday, 9th of October. There you go. There's my present to the world.
My birthday present to myself. Yeah, I was like, finally. I was tempted to keep it going for another month, but I was trying to stay true to a year, and I was chatting to Ryan about it at one point, Ryan Simpson, and he was saying the same thing. Like, when I got out the other end and just sort of let my brain think about something else, I was like, oh, thank God, it's over. But honestly, the feedback's been insane, and it's a weird one, because I'm in this. As I said to you about coming on here and talking about myself, I'm not a big I'm not the kind of person that ever says, oh, look at this good shot, or this nice shot, or amazing. I never describe my own work ever. I don't like doing it. I don't like photographers that say this stunning shot. Just put it up there and let people make their own comments. So coming on here talking about it is a strange one. But having said that, the last month I've been pushing this and pimping this like crazy. But you're using other people's comments to post as your own stories, so it's kind of like you praising yourself through somebody else. And it's very, I'm sure everyone's sick to death hearing about it, and I'm very uncomfortable doing it, because I'm not really a self-promoter. I just like to do what I do, and if people see it, they see it. So this is strange, I think, just because of the work involved in it, and just how much effort it took. I'm giving myself just a wee liberty just to push this a wee bit harder than normal,
Well, I agree. And you know what? Push it and push it and push it, because what you've created is something which is phenomenal. And I think, like, I've got two questions for you there before we go for our final break in it. Like, when you've gone to different locations in different periods of times, is there locations you'd like to go back to in different conditions now after you've got the whole thing completed? And then also you mentioned about clips, that you didn't use. So is there an opportunity there for a part two?
I've written down in my notes here, no chance, but that's not true. Um, not a part two. I'd like to go back, and there's always shots that get away. Like there's certain scenes. Like you're a photographer, you love chasing light. There's certain scenes when you're there, and it almost happens perfect. The sun's there, but and you know how it is. The low clouds come in and block it at the last second.
Yeah.
Got there, it's looking perfect, and there's so many shots that would have been mind blowing that just get away. So there's probably an ending that I had in mind that probably isn't there.
Okay.
I love the ending too. I wanted to make sure it was kind of more rocky and a bit more aggressive towards the end, because the opening was valleys and sweeps and things.
Yeah.
But there's certain things, like I said about the waterproof, I probably might go up again next year, probably more spring, summer, and just chase storms.
Yeah.
Not even with the slider this time, just go up, and I've got like a smaller bit of kit that just simple pans and just chase kind of crazy light and, just that kind of environment, so maybe not so much chasing sunrise, sunsets and like nice orangey pink skies, just go for the mood. Yeah. What was the rest of the question there? Sorry.
No, that was it. Yeah. Would there be a part two? And you said,
would there be a part two? Yeah. Do you know what? I just want to get back up with the stills camera. I just want to go up. I've been kind of pretty, like, all my mates who I go hiking with here and there have been like slagging me off because it's the most unsociable thing, shooting a time lapse in a 12 to 24 lens.
Yeah.
Like you're literally saying, here, stay off my mountain.
Yeah,
you can't go here, you can't go here, and you've got a few bubbly heads here and there, and you have to like crop them out and stuff. So yeah, like I even went shooting in Tullymore with Stephen, last week there, and it just said it's just so nice to be able to stand side by side and shoot with somebody and be sociable and not kind of feel like like it was never an issue, fighting with people, but you're aware that you need so much space for this to work. You know what I mean? And it's not very forgiving in that way. I'll probably, to be honest, I'll probably move. I'm up in Port Rush now, and it's only really dawning on me now that I'm actually living here because I've been fixated on the Mournes. So I'll probably start doing something up here when I'm ready to move back into a bigger project. Or it might be mini projects, which will then piece together. It was horrible sitting back for a year with nothing to show. It was, like, yourself. Imagine you stopped doing what you do for a year.
Oh, I don't think I could. I mean, I'd probably go crazy, or else I'd drive my wife crazy. One of the two.
Yeah. So literally, kind of, it just looked like it had fallen off the face of the earth. And that's just whenever I was really sort of getting into landscape and sort of getting a decent hang of it. And all of a sudden, you've no stills to show. At the very start, I started showing the odd time lapse. And then when I realized that it was shaping up pretty sweet, I thought, right, no, don't show anymore. And it was like 10 months of sitting on it, and it was hard. So yeah, I'll do mini projects from now on.
Well, look, I've really, really loved hearing the story in relation to it. I think you've done a phenomenal piece of work. I'll share it obviously in relation to all of our social channels and such like that. And I'll get some details, I suppose, when it comes to the end of this, where people can go and see it themselves, and links and stuff from you as well. Also, I'm going to take our last break now and listen. Look, I have 3 staple questions I ask every single guest. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask you exactly the 3 questions. So we'll be right back after this. If you're enjoying this episode of the Irish Photography Podcast, why not jump back and listen to the back catalogue we have of episodes, where you'll get some great insights from fantastic guests, gear reviews, lots of hints and tips, and above all else, keeping you company while you drive or relax. Thanks very much for listening. Please consider subscribing, leaving a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. So you're very welcome back to the final part of the Irish Photography Podcast. So, Richard, like I said, I got 3 questions to ask all my guests, and I'm really looking forward now to hearing your answers. So the first question is, what is your funny photography story?
Okay, it's not overly funny, but it maybe shows the kind of effort that went into it, and just one of the nights we had to go through.
Okay.
A friend of mine, Adam, who had generously helped to come along, and I paid him
Sherpa
to
Adam,
carry some gear. So Adam Sherpa, whatever, if he's listening, that's what all my other friends called him.
Okay.
We went up one night and shot actually one of my favorite snow scenes up on top of Binion, and Binion's a really, really hard climb. And that night, I thought about maybe sort of shooting, astro and all this kind of stuff, and getting up. Sunrise was meant to be quite nice. There was meant to be really high winds the following afternoon.
Okay.
And that was the forecast we went by. We kind of got into our tents pretty early doors. Once it gets dark in winter, there's nothing to do but just jump in and just try to warm up. And I think I got about an hour's kip, which is quite rare.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a lot.
The tents flapped like crazy up there in the winds. And when I woke up, we were getting absolutely battered, like literally, like just crazy. Like I just thought the tent was going to take off. It was really, really, really like terrifying. And I just shouted over to Adam, "We're getting bloody battered." I was like, "Yeah, I know." And he had a tent that had shredded before, maybe 5 months before, and he said, I'm really worried about my tent. And I tried to get some more sleep. You can't. It's just so noisy.
Yeah.
And about an hour later, I just heard this big fire, and his tent had just ripped apart. Just shredded down, just caved in on him, and he just shouted, "I'm out of here. I'm bailing. I'm out of here." Now I'm not the outdoor type. Now I'm proud of this year. This year is not traditional me. I've surprised myself, a lot of people. And I was sitting in my tent, freezing cold, thinking, right, okay, what do I do? Like, I either stay here on my own and lie all night terrified that if that happened to me, I wouldn't know what to do. Or I'd pack up now and go down with him. And I didn't want to step outside. It was horrific. Yeah, I couldn't imagine stepping outside into what I was hearing. So I just said, Adam, like, you gotta jump in here. My wee tent is like a kind of tiny wee, it's beautiful tent. Hilleberg, the tent maker, is so good. But it's like a wee kind of coffin tent, single man tent, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So he just dived in, head to toe. We lay there. I thought he was sleeping, but we lay there all night long. Didn't sleep a wink for about 6-7 hours, just lying there trying to sleep, freaking out, panicking. My tent got a bit of damage, but I think it was badly pitched. I got up the next morning, but the wind was even worse. Got up, everything was blowing. I lost like gloves, everything was blowing away. Loads of stuff blew down the valley. Had to run and get it. You could hardly stand up. Adam slipped near, broke a finger on the way back down. And in fairness, I wasn't paying him a huge amount. He always said, like, I'd love to be up there anyway. It's not about the money. So like, you're throwing him a bit of money to carry gear. We got back, had a laugh about it afterwards. I then said to him, I'm thinking of heading up another one of the big peaks again. And he came back and said, he'll disagree with this, but he came back and went, "Oh man, I'm not free." He pretty much said, "I'm not free ever again." he was going to such and such a country. He was joining the fire service. It was like literally all these. He was never free ever again in his whole life. I broke him. I'm pretty sure I broke him.
You broke him. You broke his good
will. He probably saved me from breaking myself because he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, well, but, Jesus, yeah.
So there's that, and then there's one final wee thing I was going to say. The very, 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 very last time lapse I shot was on top of Burna, which is like 730 meters odd. And I was standing on this rocky ledge shooting with one camera. I'd been camping for 2 nights, and I had a second camera in a 10-bit case just sitting at my feet, not being used. It was a fairly new A7S III and a pretty much brand new 24-105 sitting there beside me. And next thing I just heard a bump, and it had fallen off a ledge of about 3 feet onto the ground and rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled and hit a rock, smack. I just jumping about a foot in the air and rolling, gathering momentum, smashing about 5 rocks so hard you could hear it from like a mile away. And it finally got to this big kind of like launch pad of a big rocky outcrop, and below that was a huge drop. And it just finally came to a stop on this here just before I went off the edge. And I remember looking down and thinking, I didn't think, that's a brand new camera or that's the lens. I just looked down and thought, shit, I have to bloody walk down and get that. I wasn't even thinking about the damage. It cost 800 quid to fix. I just thought I was exhausted. That was the very last shoot of a year in the Mournes.
Wow.
I have to fucking go and get that.
Wow, Jesus, my God, yeah, Jesus. Like, do you know what? When you think about it, it's the small, simplest things like that that can go so awry so quickly. And like, it's interesting that you mentioned about camera gear, because that's the next question I have for you. Is, I know you shoot Sony, so tell me, what gear do you shoot? What do you shoot with? You've mentioned a number of different types of the bodies that you have, the lenses that you have, but what gear do you use?
So I have an A7R4, an A7 III, which will be switched for an A7 IV in a month's time.
Okay,
It's new ones coming out. It's being sort of traded in, and an A7S III,
nice.
which I use for video. To be honest, I initially got it to shoot astro time lapse, only 12 megapixels, but noise is like so clean.
Yeah.
So I might be the only person in the world who bought an A7S III for time lapse, but that's why I
Yeah.
got it. But I also
Yeah.
shoot video, so that's my main bodies. Lenses wise, most of it would have been shot on a 16-35. At one point, I got a 12-24, thinking I needed wider to get strong, more foreground, more clouds,
foregrounding,
wide.
yeah.
Because everything's 16:9.
Yeah.
But I kind of realized that was a mistake because it makes the mountains seem really far away. If you go to 12 and stuff. So I didn't use that a huge amount, if I'm honest. And then 7200, when I could actually manage to carry it up a mountain, it's so heavy. And then finally got a 24-105 to replace that. So that was of other lenses, but that's the main ones I used for this.
Very good.
And then slider, the motion control system is the Rhino Arc 2 by Rhino Camera Gear. With a high torque motor, so you can literally do like a perfectly vertical incline. It's insane. 4-axis gimbal, smooth as butter. It's such an amazing bit of kit. And then Lee filters, Nissi filters, and lens warmers for the really cold winter months. And that's about it.
Yeah. A nice array of gear, and a gear that you've put to good use and has been, stood to you well in relation to what you've created and your passion project, Mourne. So yeah, absolutely.
I probably invested about 600 quid in just the clothing, just to get through winter as well.
Yeah, clothing is really important as well. Like, I mean, like, as you know, I mean, it's not just about having one type of clothing; it's many different types of clothing. It's about the layers, and I mean, like, you go on a hike, you're sweaty by the time you get to the top. Like, you have to make sure you've got clothing there, so you might take something off even there to make sure you dry out before you put something else on, because that'll freeze. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, and then another section I have is a VSP. It's a very solid product. It's a product that you will not leave home without. You'd put your name to it if you could. So I ask you, what's yours, Richard Watson?
Okay. Well, I can't not say the Rhino Arc 2 because it's such an amazing bit of kit. When it comes to time lapse, I'd leave the house without it. If it was just shooting normally, it's a time lapse specific thing. But for video production as well, for your kind of things or what you're doing, it's the video movements on it, the time lapse movements. It's insane. I probably will leave home without it for the next 6 months because I'm sick of carrying it. It's heavy, but it's the best bit of kit I have, in the whole arsenal. By way of the everyone has gimbals and that kind of thing, but you just to dial in the perfect focus pull, and it's like a focus puller, slider, everything into one. It's brilliant.
Well, you know what, a brilliant product, and it has served you very, very well. I mean, look, I've loved hearing the story of your passion project. I think it's been fascinating. I know that there was a lot of work put into it because from a photographer point of view, but even somebody who would look at that, it's going to be quite interesting for them to see the amount of work that you actually put in to create something so phenomenal. Thank you very, very much for giving me the background story in relation to it. What's next for you now? So, I mean, like, are you thinking, are you hankering for going off now and doing another project? Have you trips away? Are you going to go to explore different areas? Are you going to go back up the Mournes, as you mentioned, for old time's sake, and leave the slider at home? What's next?
I got a camper van right before lockdown came, and
Okay.
that combined with lockdown, I'm trying. Maybe one of the reasons why I took on the Timelapse project, I'm trying to tease in more commercial work that's more tourism and landscape based. So that was one of the reasons of doing this here, just as another string to the bow in a way.
Super.
But in a way, the commercial work there's a slightly less passion for that now. It's my bread and butter, and it's what I do. I'm trying to bring on just the jobs that really excite me and really interest me, to bring in more landscape. I haven't thought about time lapse just yet. It's just so nice to be out shooting stills again, and it's so nice to be able to shoot portrait and not thinking 16:9. So I'm just loving. Stills seems so easy now. Honestly, it seems you can get a still. Photographers they've got it made. It's easy.
Yeah.
Photography is easy. All the guys listening to this, and girls, photography is a piece of piss. It feels like it. It feels like a breeze. So, like I'm on the coast, and I was out for a walk today with the dog, and just jumped in the water with waders, and just a wee throwaway shot. But I'm just out practicing again, and just shooting that. And I think long term, I'm going to try to kick down a few doors and see if I can get over to Kyrgyzstan to do a decent study over there. And then long term, probably next year, I might jump in the camper van and do like an overland trip to like the Dolomites or Norway. Although I'm kind of almost sick of seeing photography from there. So I might pick somewhere a bit different and less obvious, but a huge, van trip. Probably more photography based, but I'll shoot time lapse as well. But when I'm there,
Nice.
That's the plans.
And where can people find more info on you if they want to follow along on this past journey and also, the future journey? So where can they find more info on you?
Okay, so my main website is richardwatsonphoto.com. So that would have like commercial photography and landscapes on there and examples of film work. Facebook and Instagram is at richardwatsonphoto or facebook.com richardwatsonphoto. YouTube, I actually haven't made a proper handle yet, but if you just look up Mourne 4K or Richard Watson, you'll find the YouTuber. That's where it's in 4K. So if anyone is watching it on the big screen, it's 4K. It's like a whole different, so if you go there and watch it, that's where it's gonna like jump out a bit better. And I just jumped on Twitter the other day for the first time in 10 years, and that's at RPW Photo. So that's everywhere.
Super. Yeah. Listen, look, I'll put all the links anyway in the show notes as well below so people can find all that for you. It's like I said, it's been a fascinating conversation. I've really, really enjoyed it. I'm going to have to, unfortunately, we're at the end. I have to wrap it up now. I mean, the time has gone so quickly. Richard, thanks a million for coming on. And hopefully, if you're ever in the camper van, you want to come down south, give me a shout and we'll head off over to the wild Atlantic.
I'd love to, man. Definitely. I'll take you up on that for sure. I'd love to.
I look forward to it. So, listen.
Thanks so much for having me on, man. Really
thanks a million, man. Yeah, Schlanga full. Cheers.
Hey guys, if you dig what you're hearing, why don't you jump over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating and don't forget to share with your friends. With all that done, we'll see you next week. And remember, keep shooting.